Terrific. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we could have a roll call.
Brian Largay.
Here.
Jim Moser.
Here.
And Jenny Gomez. Here. Bob Ross is excused.
Terrific. Thank you. Our second item is changes to the agenda. Additions to the agenda, if any? Nope, not for me.
No.
All right, terrific. Oral communications, let's see, from the public for items not on the agenda. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. My head is still kind of swimming from that presentation last Thursday night about the new debt, the proposed municipal bond. There's a really interesting packet for that meeting. It's 20-some pages. So, I mean, and I think this is the most important financial issue of the year for this district. So it seems like something that the Finance Committee would want to address or, you know, be aware of. So I've been following the progress of the last two loans for years, basically. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there's I found four ways that you can lose money by borrowing a big, huge amount of money and then taking years to spend it. There's four ways to lose. And all four of the ways get worse with time. So if you borrowed a bunch of money and spent it in 1 year, it's not much of an issue. None of the four really are that much of an issue if you could do the whole deal in 1 year. But as years go by, all four of these ways to lose money get worse. And I've been watching it for the last two loans. And I guess I had an observation I didn't think of Thursday night. There's this one slide, it's on slide 23. It says, why a single series in 2026? So what he's comparing is doing one bond for 16 million, roughly 16 million, versus two bonds at 8 million and doing them in two successive years. And he goes through some analysis here. So the way to lose money that he's identified in this slide is the second one on my list. He calls that negative arbitrage. So basically somebody hands you $16 million, you have to go invest it somewhere. And where you put it is going to earn less interest than what you're paying on the bond. So you start out losing interest right away. That's negative arbitrage. And so he does a little calculation here and he says, well, the negative arbitrage is estimated to be 40,000 and the cost of the debt issuance is 400 or 500,000. So the way he proposes it, it's like a no-brainer. You got 400 or more thousand on one side and 40,000 on the other side. Well, obviously you should do one big loan, but he did not take into account the third way to lose money that is clear to me is that a year later, the money's not worth as much. The district engineer has said that construction costs are going up 5% a year. So $10 million in 2026, if you still have it in 2027, it's worth 5% less. And he didn't take that into account here. So what he says is, assume we issue bonds and we spend half in the first year and sit on the other half to spend for the next year. $8 million. You sit on it for a year. Assume that. Okay, well, then he figures out this negative arbitrage at 40,000. But what he's not taking into account is if 8 million loses 5% in 1 year, it's only going to be worth 7.6 million. And that's 400,000 of a loss. So rather than be this no-brainer the way he presents it, where it's 400 versus 40, it's really more like 400 versus 400. Now, I don't know what the inflation is going to be for construction next year or the year after. I can't predict the future, but we can look at the past and we can use it to project. That's what he's doing. He says negative carry based on 4% that we're currently earning, but that could go up or down during the next 12 months. So this estimate that he's making, it's based on, if things stay more or less the same, here's my analysis. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying if things stay more or less the same, we're gonna lose 5% if we sit on half of this money. So I think at least that should be, everybody should be aware of that and take that into account. It's one of the 4 ways to lose money. The fourth way is,
So I appreciate that. It looks like we're well over time on this comment.
I don't think I had 5 minutes. The agenda said 5 minutes, but
I'm not familiar with 5 minutes.
it says it on the agenda.
I'd like to move along if that's okay. The topics that you're presenting are highly technical. The time value of money can be calculated with assumed inflation rates. I'd suggest if you want to share technical comments like that, you write it down and email it in. I think that would make it much easier for us to digest what may be valuable input. But we're certainly not able to do the math in real time and keep up with your description. So hopefully you won't take that as discouraging. Your input is welcome, but stuff like that, please write it down. And I believe that was 5 minutes. Thank you. All right. Let's see here. A new business. Reserve policy. I believe this is a presentation by staff.
Yeah. So, as you guys know, this is the reserve policy that we've been working on for quite some time now. We did implement the changes that were discussed at the last committee meeting. We included the replenishment timeline and the relationship to the budget for each category of the reserves. We did not include the detail of how to respond to an emergency because we decided that that might be better in an emergency response plan or policy. But everything else that was discussed at last meeting was implemented into this new draft of the policy. There's a redlined copy and then also a clean copy. And if you would like, we can go over some of the changes.
That sounds productive to me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so for the operating reserve, we added the replenishment timeline. So if it falls below the target, then during the biannual budget, we will seek to restore the reserve to its target level within 2 years. And then the relationship to the budget, as part of the biannual budget, we will evaluate the balance, identify any recommended replenishment or adjustments, and incorporate those changes into the budget. For the capital reserve, I did have to take out that paragraph because it is explained in more detail later. So I just changed that to 1 sentence and then added reimbursement of capital expenditures when grant proceeds are received after project completion for one of the eligible uses. The replenishment timeline describes that in the biannual budget development process, we will seek to restore the reserve to its target within 3 years. The relationship to the budget is we shall identify the balance and identify any recommended replenishment, draws, adjustments, and incorporate those changes into the proposed budget. And then just some formatting changes for the emergency reserve, and then added a replenishment timeline for 3 years. And then the relationship to the budget, same as before, identify recommended replenishment or adjustments and incorporate those into the budget. So that is the overview of the changes that we made. I feel very confident in this policy. I think we've addressed everything that has needed to be addressed that we've been bringing up in the committee and the board meetings. But I'd like to hear from you to see what your thoughts are.
Terrific. Thank you very much. For my part, I see reflected in the revisions what I requested and what I recall the board having requested also, and am quite comfortable with it. Perhaps others on the committee would like to provide additional feedback.
No, I just echo your comments. that appreciate the work you've done on this, and it's been a long haul, but I think we're where we need to be. And I'm glad to hear that you think, since I'm not on the board, I did listen to the discussion, and it seemed to me that this was did address the issues that were raised in that discussion. So I'm fine with it.
I think we sufficiently beat
Yeah,
that to death.
yeah. I think it's time to put this horse out the pasture.
Well, I'm very encouraged, and I really do think that the replenishment timeline helps give structure to it all. That will make a lot of clarity for members of the public, for future boards, for people who weren't around the table at this time when these reserves are tapped for their intended use. The relationship to the budgeting process, I think, also just really makes it very clear how it will be reconciled and what the schedule is. So that I think is all very, very productive. I'm remembering one thing about this where the idea of I guess the implication of tapping the emergency reserve is that the board, majority board, takes a vote to tap the emergency reserve. I think implied within that is the declaration of an emergency. I don't know if there's any reason to make that explicit or to, I don't know the district's emergency declaration policy or if such thing even exists. And it may be just that by tapping the emergency reserve, we are de facto declaring an emergency. That's maybe the one loose end that I can think of that may be relevant to the process. I think that for my part, I can see how tapping the emergency reserve implies an emergency to a sufficient degree to constitute effectively calling an emergency by tapping the reserve. I'll just put that out there as one thing that might be of interest to some members of the public or the board.
We would have to see if there is a policy besides the emergency response plan that's currently enacted, or adopted, I guess I should say. And I mean, no matter what, all of these things, the declaration of emergency and the use of the funds require a formal vote of the board of directors.
Right. Yes, and I think the only reason it's relevant there is that a board that really wants to spend money on something could vote majority to tap the emergency reserve and yet do so in a way that wasn't really for an emergency, where from a
but I mean, the board
public appearances perspective, they would be embarrassed. Now they can be embarrassed by calling whatever that thing is an emergency,
Right.
and just move it one step back. So I'm not really sure how that
future boards could lower the reserve of the emergency and then thereby freeing up. I mean, there's ways to work around it if they really, really wanted to. But
that's right.
hopefully this addresses it as best we can.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm comfortable with this as written. That may be, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see a request to have something about an emergency declaration, either as a separate policy or within this be part of the discussion. Any other thoughts from the committee?
Not for me.
Move the recommended action.
Great. Well, let's hear from the public on this.
I was at the board meeting when Director Fultz said, let's not quite approve this yet. Let's put some trigger mechanism in there. So I heard that, and it made me recall more than 10 years ago, the accounting rules were a little different. But as I recall, the big money was in something called the Watershed Fund. It's like $7 million. And I think there also was capital and emergency reserve. So it was really very similar to what this is. Three different buckets slightly different names. Now what happened back then was that the water fund just went negative. They continued paying expenses, and these three funds stayed there positive, the way that they looked good, but the water fund actually went below zero. And that lasted for over a year. I mean, it got below zero and it just kept going for over a year. And I was looking at it and I was kind of saying, you know, you're kind of lying to yourselves. You ought to take $1 million out of your emergency fund and put it in the water fund, just so that you have a positive balance in the water fund. Well, anyway, it went on for over a year that they didn't take action. So even though you put in these triggers, I'm kind of wondering, what if you get to a point where you got to make the next payroll and the board didn't say knock down the capital fund because we are out of money? What would happen? I mean, would you say, I'm not going to push the button on the payroll? I mean, I guess this happened at the federal level in the last couple of months. The legislative body couldn't agree to keep paying people. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Or the next thing that occurs to me is that IRS penalty. So I believe, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but I believe that there's going to be a penalty on the 2021 loan. The fifth year anniversary is March 1st, and there's 60 days to pay the penalty. So that's April 30th. So I believe that by April, I mean, maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, and there is no penalty on the 2021 loan, but I'm looking forward and I'm thinking, based on what's happened, I think there's going to be another penalty. So that penalty is due on April 30th. What if you were right at the point where the water fund is close to zero and you got an IRS penalty to pay? Are you going to just not pay it? Or, you know, so these are the kinds of things I wonder about. But even though there's some trigger definition in there, when push comes to shove and you actually get there, will the board act, you know, at the right time, or what's going to happen then? Anyway, thanks.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion to pass the reserve policy as written.
I
And
recommend it to the board.
that's right, to recommend to the board passage of the reserve policy as written. And I think we can take a vote on that
I'll second.
after that.
Brian Larday,
Yes,
Jim Moser,
Yes.
and Jenny Gomez.
Yes.
All right, motion has passed.
thank you. All righty, the next item on the agenda is the rate assistance program.
Yeah,
Sherry.
so at the last meeting, it was requested that I bring some information, some updates about the rate assistant program, the assistant program. It was asked that I do a quarterly update. However, once I started talking to our customer service department and really figuring out, you know, how the rate assistance program works, it looks like it's only changed once a month, or I'm sorry, once a year. So for right now, we have 146 spots. We have 135 participants, and that leaves 11 spots open. We have not seen a significant increase in enrollment since the last report, whatever that may have been, because typically the participation changes during the annual renewal window, which is April and May. So my suggestion to the committee was to go ahead and just bring an update after that April-May time period. And then if there's any significant changes at that point, I would bring it back to the committee rather than doing quarterly updates.
Great, thank you very much for that report. So I had a question about the authorized number and the current participants in the open spot. It would seem to me that 11 open spots could go fairly quickly if publicity were made about this program. I'm not sure if you have a sense of what the time trend has been, if there's been a gradual addition of people signing up, or did it happen all at once and then has been flat since then? I'm not sure how likely that is to for the program to fill? And I guess I'm trying to get at that curiosity.
Sure. So it's my understanding that it was pretty much this 135 from the beginning. I know there's an application process, and then once those applications were gone through, it was deemed that, you know, these 135 participants were eligible. And then there hasn't been any changes since then, or I'll say many changes since then. So as far as getting those 11 spots filled, maybe we could do some sort of push on social media and kind of get the information out there. But I don't know how feasible that is. I'm not really familiar with our customer base in the area, so I don't know.
Sure.
You might know a little bit more than I would about those spots being able to be filled, or
No,
yeah.
not yet.
Right. Takes time.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Questions? Would you like to ask a question?
That's not a huge number of spots that are available. And I would imagine you have something on the website already that says, you know, rate assistance program, click here to apply or something to that effect. And you get some people in that way occasionally, and then maybe people coming into the offices or having trouble paying their bill because they're months behind. And then so people like, would your staff recommend, you know, if you're having trouble paying your water bill, why don't you apply here? That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's ever someone that comes in or called in with a, you know, a hardship issue, then they'll absolutely refer them to their website, so that they can fill out that application. Or if for whatever reason they don't have access to go online, you know, I'm sure we have a paper copy of it that they could fill out as well.
But it would be nice to have like a few spaces available in case somebody, you know, they lose their job, they get behind,
Sure.
and then you have those spaces that you can, you know, refer people to that are having trouble.
Right.
Instead of just trying to fill them all up, and then there's no space available for somebody later who needs it.
Mhm. Questions?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the board expanded the program last year. And I was the one who requested this, and part of that was last year before, we did hit the ceiling. And the board increased the amount in the budget in order to take care of there's 4 or 5, I think, extra people, as I recall. And then the program was expanded and added, I can't remember, I was trying to look it up, maybe 15 more or 20 more slots, something like that.
Okay.
So part of my curiosity was to see how many additional people had signed on.
I see.
The Friends of SOV Water had done a fair amount of publicity about this. We reached out to the senior center and to the rec districts, and to Mountain Community Resources. So I'm a little surprised those 11 slots haven't been filled, but I agree that it's good to have a few extras. But I think, as the board did last time, if we had a few more people than the 146, that it would be good to say, well, let's add the whatever, $1,000 or $2,000 in order to take care of everybody who qualifies. What we've found from our outreach to the community is it isn't as big a pool of people that are eligible as we thought. We thought there'd be 1,000 people eligible, but it's limited by it having to be homeowners who have their own bill. And now it looks like we can have renters, but they still have to have their own meter. And it may be that most of the people we think are eligible are in situations where there's not a single meter. That's often the case with rentals, you know, multiple people in one building. Anyway, we'll continue to do outreach with our group, and it would be great, maybe add something to the newsletter for people. I don't know how many people would see it there, but I really think, given the struggle that a lot of people have in the valley with affording everything, including water, that the extent that we can let people know that this is available to those who are qualified is really important. So what I would like, I don't think we need quarterly reports. I agree with that, but if we could just get, our committee could just get maybe on a 6 month basis, how many slots are still open? That's really the only piece of information I was interested in.
Absolutely.
And that should be fairly easy to be able to provide. So if we could do that, and if there's a change in that, just to be alerted to it. And it's really partly as my role in the Friends that I'm interested in that, because we've been trying to do outreach on it. Anyway, that's what made me bring this up last meeting.
Okay.
And we'll put in there also that if ever there comes a time within the 6 months that all the slots are vacant, that will let you know.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other questions from the committee? Comments from the public?
The only thing I wonder about the rate assistance program is my understanding, according to Prop 218, is you cannot use ratepayer funds.
Right.
So have some ratepayers subsidizing other ratepayers. So the funds have to come from somewhere else. And so is that clearly identified where the funds come from?
Yes, I mean, I can't tell you where the funds are coming from. I don't know if it's from the lease of the like the Verizon cell tower. And I know that their funds come from that, and I believe, but I don't want to be quoted. I believe that's where currently the funds are coming from, is the lease.
So when this first came up, I figured property taxes. Because this district gets, gosh, there's property tax day. This district gets property taxes, other water districts don't. Soquel Creek gets 0 property tax. Santa Cruz Water Department gets 0 property tax. But because this district does get property tax, that gives the district a little bit of flexibility in how to spend that $1 million a year, because it's not from ratepayer funds. So it doesn't, but I'm confused like you. I don't know if it's coming from some cell tower lease or if it's coming from property taxes. And I kind of wish that it was spelled out and made clear.
Yeah, if it's not clearly defined in the policy, which it doesn't sound like, if you don't know that it may not be, we'll definitely identify it and put it in there.
Terrific. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. All right, moving on to, I believe, the last item on the agenda today is the financial report. Yes, item C, financial status report.
Yes, so this was the report that was presented to the board in November 12th, or I'm sorry, November 20th meeting. It was requested at the last committee meeting that we start reviewing these reports and going into a little bit more detail as needed. So that's what this is for. Basically to just kind of dive deep into anything that you guys may have questions on or concerns on. The board has already looked at this and it was okay with them, but as the budget and finance committee, we would like you to have, more stringent eyes on things. So if you're open, or if you have any questions, I'm open.
Terrific. So I'll defer to committee members on this. I don't have anything further from what
What you did on the board?
we'll do at the board.
I'm not sure if the board, I was just struck by, first of all, that we have almost $1 million in the Wells Fargo account getting 0 interest. And I just wondered if we needed that big a balance in our checking account in order to cover expenses. It seemed like a lot. But I also noted that in the revenue line that we're getting much more interest than was budgeted for. And I assume that's because we moved a bunch of money into investments that would get interest. And so I'm really pleased that we've done that. Because I remember that came up. I'm not sure if it came up in the committee or I think at the board level it came up. So thank you for doing that. And I was just wondering why we're keeping almost $1 million in the checking account and whether we need to maintain that level in order to guarantee we can handle all the operating expenses.
Well, I mean, I signed a work order from Anderson Pacific, who's working on the Bracken Brae and Forest Springs consolidation for $300,000. So
Okay.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb
Yeah.
is to keep, around a month worth of expenditures within the
That's
actual
very, very
the
liquid.
checking account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
But that being said, because we are doing a lot of projects, we can kind of evaluate it a little bit. I know back in Ridgecrest for the city, I kept 2 million in the checking at all times just because we needed to be ready to go at certain times. And then about your question as far as the interest earning. So it's best practice to be really conservative about interest because you never know what's going to happen as far as the market.
Right, right.
So it's always a really good thing when your interest earnings is higher than your budget, but it can't always be the case. So we really like to budget conservatively with that.
Thanks.
I have nothing.
Any comments from the public with regard to the budget?
So. My phone just went to a different page. The first page lists I don't have it in front of me now. It's got a bunch of things like the outstanding loan balance. There's this list of, I guess it's the restricted fund list. Okay, so 2 of those line items have an asterisk. And there's a footnote that says something about transfers. And I guess I don't understand what that is. I mean, right now it's down to one of those line items is 0 and the other one's $1,500. But the asterisks, I guess I don't understand why those got asterisks. Why are they different than any other line on the report? It seems like they should all be, everything says of September 30th. So it should all be on the same terms, I guess. So I don't understand the asterisk. The next thing I didn't understand is the 4.1%. I think that there was a treasury bond that matured in April that was yielding, or treasury note or whatever it was, that was yielding 4.1%. So I think that's kind of like old history. That's more than 6 months out of date. There isn't anything that's earning 4.1% right now. The county fund was 4.06, and so, but that 4.1 seems like it's left over from something that it's no longer true. So I appreciate that there's a lot more interest being earned than 6 months ago. And I appreciate that almost all of the money from those 2 bond offerings before has been spent, except for this $1,500. One thing I want to point out about the $1,500, that loan, this is 6 years, more than 6 years after that loan was taken out. There's still money left over. It's kind of hard to believe that it's taken more than 6 years to spend that. I mean, it's really hard to understand how that happened. But for example, when I was talking about the 5% inflation, 6 years of 5% inflation means that the money that we borrowed in 2019, those dollars today are only worth 75 cents of what they were in 2019. So this is one of the ways that you lose by borrowing big amounts of money, is that the cash depreciates, it devalues over time. So that $1,500, when it was $1,500 in 2019, it was worth $1,500 in 2019, but today it's worth $1,500 in 2025, which is only $1,125 in 20. I mean, we've lost 25% of the value of that money in 6 years. That's why I'm pointing this out as one of the ways to lose. Thanks.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments on this topic generally?
No, not for me.
Great. All right, let's see here. Back to the top. To read my script. Let's see here. Unfinished business is none. Informational material are the minutes. I forget our procedure with regard to minutes. If there is a procedure with regard to minutes.
If it's just the minutes, you can just let us know if there's any changes or any errors or.
Great. Any comments from the committee with regard to the minutes?
Not for me.
Are we going to take a vote to pass
You don't
them?
have to do it.
Nope.
You don't have to do it. At the board meeting, we do it because a lot of times the consent calendar has approval of accounts payable, and that has to be done by motion and roll.
Gotcha. Okay. And is public comment with regard to the minutes customary?
Not normally, but you can.
Okay. Let's not.
I just didn't see them. Are they in the packet?
There's a link to them.
They're linked in the packet. All right. Let's move on then. Committee comments, general comments from the committee, requests of future agenda items.
I was kind of wondering about, I've been looking into the zone 0 requirements that are kind of coming down from the state.
For fire protection?
For fire protection, does that apply to water district, structures of buildings and that type of thing?
That's an interesting topic that could be investigated. I think that would likely be investigated within the environmental or engineering because it would have to do with facilities and vegetation management. What I know about that is that the proposed regulations, I believe, are for very high fire hazard zones.
Our district.
Some of our district is. Okay.
All of Boulder Creek along.
It's very high.
236. It's all. Yeah, there's a big chunk of Boulder Creek and north.
Gotcha.
That's part of that's
maybe I paid more attention. I think most of Felton and where I live is medium and high, but the Sandhills and other areas. So that's of interest. Maybe I'm not sure. We'll give that to staff and
we'll take it
have a look.
Put it on the appropriate committee.
Right. Certainly vegetation management, fire protection is important. One of the interesting things that just to put it on your radar is that the recommendation has to do with clearing vegetation or maintaining it in a green condition, which may imply increased irrigation in the service area, and how that gets written and how it translates into behavior. There's a few different links in the chain there that would need to happen before it affects our water consumption, but there may be an effect down the line. Did you have other thoughts on that or other items?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it applied to, is it all structures no matter what? Does it apply to structures within water district or just, residential or, what all and I guess the rules aren't finalized yet. So who knows until after January 1st, and then you have 3 years, I guess, to come into compliance if it applies to you. But I was just curious.
Yeah. Great. Me too.
Another thing going on in the county is this communications upgrade of their communication system. I guess it's emergency. I don't know very much about it. It just came up at the Felton Fire District, and the county is seeking a lot of money from each of the special fire districts. And I don't know if the water district uses any of that county communication network. I hope not.
They use it at our radio tower.
Oh, you do?
The sheriff's department is up at our radio tower.
Oh,
So
okay.
we give them police department and the school district. So
That's been in the works for a very long time.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of negotiations related to it. It's not a new thing. It's, they've been given a lot of advanced warning about all of this because our communications as they exist for emergency response are completely and wholly inadequate.
Yeah, but it won't affect the district, the water district.
No.
Yeah, good.
if there is critical infrastructure like that on district property, we may be eligible to secure grant funding through Office of Resilience Response and Recovery or other lead agencies to improve roads or fencing or veg clearing or other things.
Something that we were considering because we're also working with the Zianthi Fire Protection District, installing a alarm, if you will, at one of our sites to let people in the area know if there's an emergency.
Nice. Like a siren type of,
Siren.
oh, fascinating. Great. Other committee comments?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. Anything from staff? Great. All right, we will adjourn this meeting. Thanks very much.